Batya. How you doing?
Thank God. Very good. Thank you so much for having me, Adam. I feel like this is so long overdue.
Yes. But you know what? The way I see things is everything happens for a reason, or at least most things happen for a reason, but the timing of it is also important. So I was just telling you, like, these are new lenses, right? And it's special. And you're my first person to be on this particular lenses to get this particular look, which is special. So you're a special person. But why don't you, for people who might not be familiar with you, why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Batya Ungar-Sargon. I'm the opinion editor of Newsweek, longtime fan of Adam Coleman, and I am the author of Second Class, How the Elites Betrayed America's Working Men and Women, which came out a couple weeks ago, and Bad News, How Woke Media is Undermining Democracy, which came out a couple years ago.
Very nice. Now, I do have a question before we got to eat.
We got to eat.
Yeah. Before we dive into that.
Yes.
Before we dive into topics, we got to dive into food. Which, by the way, is your jam, because I don't know how many dinner parties you've invited me to. So you like talking politics over food.
We do. You've been a wonderful addition to our Shabbat dinner rotating cast of characters.
And sometimes it's like an eclectic group of people, which is good. Good. So I did have one question for you, because I don't know if I ever heard an answer as to why, but you had, correct me if I'm wrong, but you were once woke, as you would define it. I don't know if anybody asked you, but why were you woke?
Someone recently asked me that. They said, well, now you have all these questions about the left, but what made you initially become a leftist? So I think I've always felt a very deep spiritual connection to the Black struggle. And if you're, I could see why a lot of people get bamboozled into believing that wokeness is the continuation of that. It's very hard to accept that much of what Dr. King fought for has come about, has come to pass. Given the history in this country, it's very hard to accept the truth, which is that much of that history is history, especially when there is a sort of self-anointed clerisy benefiting in very real economic terms from trying to convince us that that is not the case. And if you make the wrong friends because your social group is, you know, an extension of your education, and you went to fancy universities like I did, you're going to be exposed to those ideas. And, you know, the way that I think about it is like the burden of proof that things are better falls on those of us making that argument because of the history. Now, I think that we have acquitted ourselves well. And I think most people know that. I think most Black people know that as well, which is where I get the confidence to say that. But, you know, if you are part of an elite that is benefiting in real economic terms from the denial of those facts, it becomes much harder to acknowledge them. And so I think I got bamboozled in that way, like many other white progressives.
Where did you go to school, by the way?
I went to University of Chicago, which actually was not woke at the time. And then I went to Berkeley, which also was not, I mean, I don't remember it. So I don't remember. I knew I was not popular, but I didn't know why.
Excuse me. I wasn't expecting you to say that.
But then when I moved to New York, I made friends with people who were like in that kind of, you know, milieu. And including, I had two very close friends who were Black, who were extremely woke. One of them died tragically. And I had two other Black friends who were not political and not woke. And I remember when they were really like, why are you always talking about this stuff? Which was sort of like my first inclination that maybe, you know, things weren't as they seemed. Yeah.
But actually, did you go to school for journalism or to do
No.
any other? Where'd you go to school for?
I got a PhD in English literature. It's a
Okay.
very silly thing to do.
All right. So take me back to that, Batya. What was her objective with the PhD in English literature? What'd you want to be?
I think I wanted to be a journalist, but like you had to take unpaid internships, and that was like not on the table for me.
Hmm.
I thought, oh, I'll get more education. They paid you at the time, it was $18,000 a year to be a grad student, which was more money than I'd ever had since, you know, leaving my parents' home when I was like very young.
Hmm.
So I was like, whoa, that's so much money. I can live on that. So I did that for 7 years, and then, you know, started writing journalistic articles, and it went really well. It was hard in the beginning. I was lucky because my husband was really supportive. But at some point, that too was just like economically not feasible. I'd moved to New York and I was making, you know, $25,000 to $30,000 a year, and I just couldn't keep. I mean, it was like I was grown up, like it wasn't feasible, and so I took an editor position because those pay more. The rest is history.
The rest is history.
What about you? You never fell for the woke stuff, or did you? Was there a time when you were more left?
So that's a good question. So this is kind of a long answer, but I worked for this company. I used to work off hours. I worked from, what time did I start? I think I started work at 3 a.m. And I was like the only IT guy that was awake for the entire company. And it was nationwide.
Mhm.
It had a whole bunch of warehouses across the country. So like 95% of the time, nothing was happening. It's just completely dead. And if something's happening, it's usually something small. Very rarely is it like some emergency. And if it was some sort of emergency, it's probably not for me. I have to call and wake up someone, like my boss. But with that time, it's like, well, what do you do when there's nothing, absolutely nothing going on that early in the morning? So I would just go on YouTube.
Uh-huh.
I remember looking up all types of content, just like I'm a consumer of content.
Uh-huh.
And I remember looking up old Phil Donahue episodes. And then I came across like Phil Donahue episodes with Farrakhan and what he had to say. And I was like, you know, I never listened to what Farrakhan actually like. What did he verbalize? And I was like, oh, that's interesting.
What was your impression of Farrakhan before you watched those videos? Like,
Honestly, I didn't know much.
mhm.
I didn't know much.
You just knew he was like a kind of
Controversial
preacher.
figure.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
You know, and even to this day, I'm still unsure what his narrative and unsure what he really feels.
Mhm.
But that Farrakhan's a whole other topic. But as far as like the woke stuff, that's kind of like what led into it because I was looking at other Black figures, and then like different people would pop up, like when you start searching for that stuff. And I remember running across Tim Wise, and I was like, huh, that's kind of interesting.
Mhm.
And
Did it
then
resonate with you as true?
partially, because that's how the stuff works. It's like it has to be sort of true, right? If someone mentioned slavery was real.
Mhm.
They say it was, you know, abhorrent. Well, it was.
Mhm.
So like some of the stuff they're saying is true. It's just where does it lead? That's the problem. And so even Tariq Nasheed, I came across him. I just came across all these, you know, maybe social justice, pro-Black figures, all these different ideologies that are mixed in with it. And I remember for like a very short period of time, I was like, yeah, power plus privilege. I guess, yeah, I guess that makes sense. And then I just remember thinking like, no, this doesn't work. Like I was trying to think like, how do I apply this in my life? And it just doesn't seem to work.
How so? How come?
for one, my son is mixed.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I don't know, I have Black friends and white friends.
Mm-hmm.
And the way, whether it's overt or covert,
Mm-hmm.
it breeds animosity,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it holds a group accountable.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, well, I don't think that's right that I hold an entire group of people accountable for the actions of a few, because not everybody owned slaves, right? And then they would say, oh, well, they were participating in the system. So it just goes into this reasoning for wanting there to be animosity
Mm-hmm.
and anger. And I'm a very empathetic and forgiving person. So I don't know, it just didn't feel good to me. And so it was very, very short lived that wanting to apply it in my life. But as far as like consuming the content,
Mm-hmm.
I consumed the content for a little bit. You know, I wanted to at least understand where they're coming from. So I consumed it for a number of weeks.
Do you think certain personality types are drawn to it more than others?
I don't think it's personality type driven.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is. I think it is fueled by a couple of things. So for some, it might be fueled by genuine goodness, right? They want to be good people, and someone introduces them. This is how you be a good person, and they just go down that line. But some of them continue with it because it gives them purpose,
Mm-hmm.
and I can understand that. Like the people who want to go on bridges and shut it down
Mm-hmm.
because some of them really truly believe that this is just one small step to freeing the people in Gaza, right? They truly believe this. And it gives them purpose. Because you have to ask yourself, like, why does someone do what they do? So usually people point out like this person did this, but my question is why? Why did they do it? Like, we don't just do things for no reason. There's a reason behind it. So why? And for me, I just started looking at it like they seem very purposeless, because people who have purpose, I notice, can go in a straight line directly to that purpose. And it doesn't matter what other people say, they're straight line to that purpose. And that's how they behave. It's like, I don't care. I don't care if I don't care. I'm going to free Gaza. that's exactly how they think. That's their purpose. That's what they're driven by. And I think that's what keeps people into it. What gets people into it, I think, is the promise of a utopian outcome where everything is great. And you're going to be the freedom fighter that makes it happen. They use old stories like abolitionists.
Mm-hmm.
See, those abolitionists were seen as extreme and crazy at the time. And look at them now. You want to be the abolitionists of today? It's stuff like that. They romanticize revolution. They bring people in like that. You want to be the good person. We're going to help you be the good person. But it's the follow through. It's everything else that comes after it.
How mainstream is this, like within the Black community, would you say?
Not very.
Yeah, that's my sense of it too.
Not very. I mean, we'll use Black Lives Matter. Just about every Black person I know agrees with the sentiment that Black Lives Matter. As far as what the organization believes and does and this and that, no, care. It's rare that I've seen like a Black Lives Matter shirt on a Black person. Just to be frank with you.
That's amazing.
Let me tell you. So I recently went to see Warren Smith, and this is not Warren Smith, his doing or anything.
Who's
like
Warren
that.
Smith?
He's a professor. He has a YouTube series and stuff like that. I was driving through this neighborhood near him, and it was weird because it was a really nice neighborhood. So that's key part. It's really nice, and so you could tell it's affluent. And I remember going down the street, and every house had a rainbow, Black Lives Matter. It was like a meme, like how the right has memes. It was like a meme of the left, but in real life.
It's so funny.
You know, there is no hate in this home, like
It's so funny.
as their yard sign. Like I was like, what is this? Like this is strange. There, every house had Black Lives Matter. It was like everyone was doing it, and that's why I keep saying this is the religion of the affluent. They really truly believe this. This is what they do, and it looks weird, and they don't see that it's weird because they're like in this bubble. But like nobody does it. Imagine going to the projects and seeing rainbow flags and Black Lives Matter everywhere. Like that would look weird. They got bigger problems, you know. That yeah. I don't know.
It's really interesting. Do you think the same is true of the like Gaza activism?
In what sense?
Well, it seems like it's kind of like, it's funny because the way that the woke activism spreads, like it started with like George Floyd, Black Lives Matter. It didn't start with that, but like, and then in my view of things, like they realized there was like very little buy-in from like mainstream Black people who are extremely moderate, still believe in the American dream, like kind of just, you know, want more opportunities for themselves and their children. So then they moved on to the trans. You know, there's much fewer trans, so it's like a better victim group, you know, to hold up. But you know, there it's like their argument that this is the next civil rights movement or fight was met with like the reality of like women being like, are we supposed to just eat it? You know what I mean? Like was like, so that got a lot of pushback. Then they moved on to illegal migrants. That comes in waves, right? Like, you know, Black people don't matter anymore. Like, you know, the real Americans, the real victims are like, you know, these illegal migrants who cross the border, you know, many of whom are criminals and whatever. Like they are their new, like, you know, priority. They put them in all of these spaces that like Black people use in order to keep their kids off the streets and like basically hand over all these resources to them.
Right.
You know, and now it's Gaza, right? And it's like, they just move from one thing to the next and they bring the same energy to like the climate fight and it's the same. See, I disagree with you. Like when I see people blocking the road to an airport or blocking a bridge, I think these are people who don't want to win. These are people who want the moral high ground over the mainstream who they are inconveniencing. Like they don't want the people sitting in traffic to be like, oh, wow, I never thought about it that way. Gaza really matters. They want them to be like, F you, F those Palestinians. Like that's what they want because they want to be in a position of like elevated virtue over the common folk. Like that's kind of how I see it. They're not organizing. They're activists. So they're not trying to like, they're not doing what Dr. King did, which is appeal to like the higher nature in every human who's created in the image of God and saying, I know that in your heart, you know, this is wrong, right? They're doing the opposite. They're saying to like good-hearted people, like you are bad, no matter what is in your heart, no matter how much you mourn for the victims here. Like, so I think that that's kind of the common thread. And when you know you have when they are met with like good values in middle America among the common man, that is their kryptonite because they can't just say, oh, wow, look, it's like, I guess we're not needed anymore. They have to change the messaging so that the average person will be on the wrong side of history. So that's how you get something like defund the police. It's not enough that all Americans agree that cops should treat Black people a little bit better. You know what I mean? Like, that's not enough. They had to change it, right? Same thing with Dr. King's vision. Like, if it's true, which it is, that the vast majority of Americans now agree with Dr. King, like 95%, well, that's going to put them out of business. How are they going to feel morally superior to the average American and thus like prove their status as the elite? They have to turn on Dr. King's vision and say, now it's racist to want to live in a colorblind society.
Well, so this is a couple things. This is why they stay within their bubble, right? Because they don't really have any interest in what we say or anybody else says. It's about the goal, right? They got to stay. So having some sort of outside interference is just going to disrupt it. But on top of it, they just don't care. They really don't care. I think there are people who are more malicious than others. I think there are people who are more useful idiots to a particular cause than others. But I honestly think that the problem isn't that they're like, yeah, let's stick it to the poor people or anything like that. They just don't even think about it.
Mm-hmm.
They're in their own world, oblivious, and they really truly believe this is normal. This is what they do. Some people just go along with, like, do I think every neighbor in that neighborhood really believes that? They see two do it and they're like, I guess we got to do it.
Where's your sign?
Where's your sign?
Do you not think Black Lives Matter?
All right, I'll put the sign out. Like, it's just in response to an authoritarian few who live on that block. And I think that's what we're seeing. We're seeing an authoritarian few enter positions of influence and bogart us to believe that what you think is wrong.
Right.
And actually, we're not alone. Everybody thinks it. And if, let's say the majority of the media truly believes in this stuff and they've been indoctrinated into it, and then they push it on everybody. This dog.
She okay?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. If an indoctrinated media establishment pushes all this stuff on everyone, she's gonna so climb all over you. You almost have to like push her off.
Ooh, okay.
Bella. Sit.
Yes.
There you go. All right.
Listens to Papa.
Sometimes you have to like push her off. Otherwise, she'll keep trying to kiss you. Yeah.
Let's move this so it doesn't knock over.
Yeah. I forgot what I was saying. I'm basically saying if the media is not wholly, but let's say mostly feeling this particular way, this is their ideology. Well, that's a lot of influence because now you can control the message that goes out. And if every time you turn on the TV, it's this message, it makes you think that a lot of people agree with this. And really it's the minority, it's the few.
I feel like the media has very little influence, and that's a good thing.
And you know what, as much as I said that, I kind of agree with you. It has little influence in some ways. In other ways, it has a lot of influence.
Yeah, on policy, maybe.
Yeah. Like, people in DC think that the media is God.
Right. Like if Joe Scarborough said, Biden, enough, control the border. I need 3 executive actions out of you tomorrow, he'd probably do it, right? I mean,
he'd have some advisor like, you're getting killed on MSNBC.
Right.
You know, that would become like the feedback loop that he'll get, or he'll be part of. But as far as, do people buy into it? Do regular people buy into it? Most people don't watch the news like that. You know, if they did, then it would have far reaching impact.
I feel like most people, like they watch the news and they read social media, and for everything they see, like normal people, average people, like every post they see, they think to themselves something along the lines of, that's interesting. I wonder if it's true. I feel like most people are extremely skeptical, and that's really good. Like that's exactly what you should think when you see something from the New York Times or from, Steve Bannon or from whoever it is, from your auntie, you know what I mean? Like everything, you should greet it with the same exact, like, that's interesting. I wonder if it's true. And I really feel like that's how most people read the news today.
Yeah. She's going to block your shot.
But she's so cute. She's so much cuter than me. So much cuter than me. Is it messing up your... You want to get rid of her?
Yeah, because I feel like I'm talking to her now.
I think that's what she wants.
Yeah.
Okay, now you must go to the bed. Go to the bed. Go to the bed. Yeah, I'm sorry, Adam. Okay. I'm sorry. It's irresistible. It's totally my fault.
Bed.
I'm a bad influence.
stay. She understands what that means. So she gets up. She's being stubborn.
So I feel like in some ways your story is kind of like people could look at you and think like, oh, you're proof that the meritocracy works because you're, homeless, grew up without a father, you face so many struggles in your life and you're such a success story. But part of me is like, no, what your story proves is if a person is exceptional, the system will work for them.
Mhm.
Like, I think that is not everyone, like, I mean, a kid growing up in an inner city in, gang territory, like, do they really have access to the American dream? No. I mean, if you're living in like one of these Chicago neighborhoods where, the death rate for young Black men is higher than the Congo, like you're probably not going to be able to study for tests. And even if you are exceptional, you probably won't be able to like make it. Same for like some corners of rural America where everyone's dying of fentanyl and everything. But, to me, the problem that I'm exploring in my book is like, can exceptional people make it? Many of them can. But what about everybody else? Like everybody who's not as smart as you and not like our society actually relies on the labor of the unexceptional
Mm.
in a big way. And the meritocracy, which fiction that it is, even if it were working 100%, why is it that, only the exceptional should have access to like the most basic version of the American dream? I think that is really unfair. Like, and it kind of misses the point because, when we argue about the meritocracy and merit, like we're actually forgetting that if all of the people whose jobs were unexceptional, like stopped working, we would all starve tomorrow.
Right.
But if all of the like, really, really smart people, like disappeared tomorrow, like, yeah, we wouldn't have any new like cancer prevention, whatever, cancer treatments. We probably wouldn't get much further in terms of, but we would all still be okay. Like if all the journalists disappeared, like society would probably still be able to function. And so I think I'm really curious what you think about that.
That's an interesting way of putting it. I'll say it like this. I do think that there is like a I can't talk. Hustle culture that's like, oh, go out and just get it, you know. And I'm not trying to say like, if I can do it, you can do it. What I'm saying is, I do believe that um, God has given us the ability to overcome obstacles. It is something that is incredibly difficult, right? You have to withstand a lot to overcome it, but it is possible that most of us are capable of doing it. And let's say I'm wrong. I don't think the other mindset works, right? So even if I'm wrong, even if I'm just being purely optimistic, going around saying, well, they're exceptional and I can't do it, I think that is far worse than living a lie of thinking, well, it's possible, right? So, I might be just painfully optimistic when I say that, but I think being more optimistic about yourself and what you're capable of doing is far more beneficial than the other. Um, I don't know. You could be right as far as um, being exceptional. I don't really see myself in that way. Like I've humility by default when it comes to me, so I kind of downplay a lot of stuff. But um, you are so dramatic. This dog is crying.
Because you cannot sit with Auntie Batya.
I'm about to kick her out of the room. She wasn't like this before. Sit.
If she sits here, is it okay?
Yeah. She just can't be climbing up.
Sit. Eat.
Sometimes you have to like force her to lay down.
Sit. Down. Yes. Good girl.
There you go.
Okay. Good girl. Good girl. Yes. Okay.
God. Belly goes whenever she wants. Yeah, I think you make a point though. I think you make a point as far as the exceptional sometimes are saying like, hey, I was able to do it. Everybody can do it. And if they don't, then something's wrong with you.
Yeah.
It's just like, no, sometimes like you just can't,
Yeah.
you know, and we can't just say everybody is just, oh, well, you couldn't make it, so screw you. We have to find some sort of way to appreciate everybody in society the best way we can. But no, I do think that there's actually, I just wrote an article talking about Gen Z and like having this entitlement at work. And she's still crying. Oh, I'm like hearing stuff. Just right. About Gen Z feeling entitled at the workplace. But I remember after writing that, I would get comments from people, and they've literally said like, someone was like, "I'm never going to become a millionaire by staying here," and it's like that's a weird concept. Like, why would they? Like, I don't know anyone who's a millionaire who is like, "Yeah, my goal is to become a millionaire."
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, but that's like it's a weird thing that's happening. I think it's because of social media, which shows like fake rich people.
Yeah.
Because they're not rich. Even back in the day, I don't know if you ever watched MTV Cribs.
No, but what a great concept for a show.
But like, you know, it was like Lifestyle of the Rich and Famous,
Uh-huh.
but for musicians and, you know, some celebrities. And often you end up finding out like half the places that they showed you were rented houses, half the cars were rented cars. Like it was fake. It wasn't real. And that's kind of like what we're living in, like in this
So
fake
sad.
society. And these kids think like, well, if that guy was able to get it, I should be able to get it. I should be a millionaire too. Why do you even want to be a millionaire? Like they can't even answer that for you.
Something else that I found in my book, both in my interviews that comported with the data, was I met a lot of like people, Black people who had come from stable 2-family homes where the parents were homeowners, solidly middle class, grew up in, the 70s, the 80s, the 60s, but had found it impossible to replicate the kind of stability that their parents had achieved. And now their children were kind of following their lead and having children, in high school, and then working, dead end jobs, and, getting, having trouble. And I found that so depressing, and it made me really angry at like liberal policy, because like obviously that was not the result of racism. Like it was not less racist in this country in the 60s, or the 70s. So what happened? And by the way, so the data shows that, some insane percentage of Black kids raised in middle class homes will end up poor. And, we should be more angry about that. And yet, instead of being able to talk about it, there's like a taboo around it. And, other things that I noticed, like in the book, there's a police detective, and he was telling me that, he spends a lot of nights, sitting in the hospital with a suspect, or sitting in prison, watching them, in jail, making sure, whatever it is, trying to get confessions, trying to get this, that, and many like overnight, 8-hour shifts talking to people who commit violent crime. And he said to me, "You would not believe how many of them have been sexually molested."
Oh yeah.
And he's not saying that as like to absolve them. He thinks they all belong in prison, but I just remember him saying that to me. "You would not believe how many of them." And we know that children who grow up in a home with a father who was not their biological father are exponentially more likely to be sexually abused. Like, how is this not like the direct line between that and violent crime, which of course terrorizes poor communities, working class communities, Black communities? Like, instead of talking about this stuff, the left has created a taboo around discussing it, because I think they know in their hearts that it implicates them. But the taboo perpetuates like child sexual abuse. And we're like, and meanwhile, on the right, all they want to talk about is like sex trafficking, which is like not even real. I mean, like, it's like, yeah, the cartels are doing it, but like are there really like, white kids being like sex trafficked? Not really. Like it's like this bogeyman and all of this stuff is like a massive distraction from the problems that are like right in front of our eyes.
Hmm.
And then we can't even talk about this stuff.
Yeah, so there's definitely trafficking that's happening. It's like anything else. Are there Everybody from both the left and the right has a grain of truth of what they're saying, but it's just a matter of but how much of that is a problem. Like, um, is it happening everywhere? Is it just a few cases and we're just
Right.
blowing the few cases?
Right.
Like George Floyd.
Exactly. Yeah. There's sex
Unfortunate.
trafficking, like there's
Yeah.
shootings of Black unarmed men. Like, of course it happens. Of course it's horrific.
Right.
Is it like a national scourge? No.
Right. Now, one of the things I can't remember if I wrote it for Newsweek about this, but single parenthood is a vulnerability for kids because of that very issue. At some point, because most of the children who are single parent homes grow up with their mothers, at some point, she likely wants a relationship. So whether the guy's a good guy or not, there's going to be another man that enters the picture.
Right.
And she could wait a year, she could wait 5 months, whatever. But at some point, if she's trying to have a serious relationship, that man is going to get close to that child. And that's the vulnerability. And there are some great stepfathers, and kids are like, my stepfather was great, real father figure in me. That's wonderful. However, it's like anything else. By smoking, you increase the odds of you getting cancer. Smoking doesn't guarantee that you'll get cancer, but you're just increasing the odds. In the same way, we're talking about single parenthood increases the odds of being victimized,
Right.
of being molested, of being taken advantage by someone who's not your parent. And the other thing that's really disturbing that no one wants to actually think about, there are men that target single mothers. This is what they target. If you go on dating apps, you know who's single mother. It's in their profile. They target single mothers. And listen, regular guys date single mothers, just whatever. But these guys look for it. And they're predators. That's exactly what they do. So they look for vulnerabilities. They look, how do I get close to a kid? And there's all different types of signs to maybe get an idea, but you can't always spot these guys, just like any other predator. You can't always spot them. Yeah, it does not, what you just said does not shock me. I bet there are a lot of young men, especially, who are in jail and have been, a lot of them in foster care system. That's another thing that I wish there were more people who are like in this space coming from the foster care system to talk about it and blow the whistle on it. Because man, every time I talk to someone or I hear stories, actually I do know one woman. She's not as known, but the stuff that goes on, like it's like an open secret. Like everybody knows. Oh yeah. They're molesting kids left and right. And it's not just the one staff worker. No, it's like the director. It's like a hierarchy, and then they just move the kids around, and no one cares. No one listens to these kids. So I mean, for me, the family unit is the ultimate protection for children, and that's like our North Star. That's what we should head towards. Not every relationship is going to work out that way. My son and his mother didn't work out in that way. But I wouldn't be like, well, everything is fine, so everybody should just mimic what we did. Like, no, I realize he has a stepfather, right? Or he had a stepfather because they separated. But like, he could have been in the same situation. Turns out the guy didn't do anything, right? He's not a pervert. He's not a predator. But that's the vulnerability that I placed my son in by not having him in marriage, not staying with his mother, and so on and so forth. So I just try to think of it in that particular way, but a lot of people underestimate how much sexual abuse happens. Yeah. I don't know if you've ever seen the Steve Wilkos show.
Mhm.
Does it sound familiar? I don't want to say it's a trashy show. He used to be
I love trashy shows.
you love trashy.
I only watch trash. My husband's making me watch Shogun and I want to kill myself. It's so good. It's like, but where's the trash?
Where's trash? I want to say like over 50% of the episodes are about giving people lie detector tests. And it's because someone's making an accusation, and most of them are about molestations, child abuse.
Wow.
And
do they mostly turn out to be true?
Yes. So some of them might be like they're an adult now, but they claim that they were molested when they were a kid, and none of their family believes them. And they want to prove to their family that they were molested by their father. And so they take a lie detector test to show. And it's very emotional when you do watch it, because it's like
a great show. What's it called?
Steve Wilkos.
It's very up my alley.
Yeah. But it's heavy. Like
right.
It's
sensationalized. I love that. That's a really good combination.
I don't even know like if it's purely sensationalized, because I do think there's sincerity there. Like what he's saying, he really means like, you're a piece of trash for what you did to your daughter.
Oh, he then confronts the father?
Oh yeah, like the people are there.
Wow.
Like most of the time, this damn dog.
Sit here like a good girl. Sit.
Yeah.
Sit, good girl.
Most of the time, the people are there that they're confronting.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sounds amazing. I'm totally gonna watch that. There's like a few more months before the next episode of The Bachelor.
Oh, you really do watch trash TV.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God. Do you think that people take themselves too seriously these days? Okay.
100%. I can't. People keep asking me what I like, what I think about RFK Jr. And I'm like, I can't get past the fact that he doesn't seem to have a sense about himself.
I haven't watched him closely enough to assess that.
Like, takes himself extremely seriously. The whole thing seems to me like he's some like overgrown 18-year-old famous rich kid. Like, this is very elitist of me. Like, the only thing that matters is whether he would pass like legislation that I think would be good for the middle class. And the answer is I don't think he would, because he spent his whole life, doing this zero fossil fuel stuff that's like class warfare on the working class, and being sort of a crackpot on vaccines. So I don't think he's like a serious contender. But beyond that, just the aesthetics of the campaign, like the shirtless push-ups or whatever he was doing, and the like videos of him skiing with celebrities, and like it's so like rubs me the wrong way. And then like on top of all, it would be one thing if he had kind of a sense of humor about it, but it's like on top of all that, there's this feeling of like that he is the standard bearer of some sort of legacy. And I just, that's so.
You've heard people say stuff like that?
Like what?
Oh, he's a Kennedy, so he should get his chance or something like that.
I think he thinks that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like,
you would have a better idea than me, because I don't really pay attention.
I don't think anyone would have paid attention to him if his name wasn't Kennedy. Like, he would have been another Jill Stein, That's
a good point.
He says that he cares about the middle class. I believe him that he cares about the middle class now, but he's been a Kennedy his whole life. He's 72 years old, 69 years old. Like, a lot of time you could have been doing stuff for the middle class, Maybe that's not fair. I don't know. He claims that he turned down an offer from Donald Trump to be his VP. If he did, that would have been really stupid. He should have done that. And it's so, like, I don't know if it's true that Trump offered it to him, but if he did, that was brilliant. Like, because if he's looking for a Democrat to be his VP, that proves the argument I've been making, which is that if the left wasn't so obsessed with Trump, he would be seen as like a unity candidate, because all of his policies are like dead center. Yeah. He is the centrist candidate.
So it's funny you say that. He is not a conservative.
He's not a conservative.
He is not a conservative whatsoever. Now, here's the thing. it's weird because you have to figure out, when we say conservative, what are you talking about? So like in his policies aren't really conservative.
No.
They're much more moderate in his policy. Now, his demeanor is not very moderate.
Well, but his demeanor is not conservative either.
It's not conservative either.
It's very
Correct.
flamboyant, you know? He's flamboyant, which is like a characteristic you usually associate with, like, I mean, I don't know. It's sort of nonpartisan, right?
Yes.
Because there is that sort of Texas flamboyance, you know, that kind of Southern flamboyance, which is associated with like the right.
But he doesn't have that.
No, he doesn't have that.
He doesn't have that. This is very, it's a very particular.
Yeah, it's like a WWE flamboyance. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. That's very much
he's like
so
the
what it is.
heel in a WWE fight. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's great stuff. It's great stuff.
Now, what's interesting is that, because I would classify myself as a moderate.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting is that Trump often turns off the moderates.
He's undignified.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, that's why I keep telling people, like, politics is whatever you focus on.
Yeah.
So for you might be a one issue voter, and like you'll ignore everything else as long as this person supports that issue. And someone else might be like, all right, 75% of them I like, that's enough for me. I can ignore the 25%. So everybody is different, but I think for a lot of moderate voters, they look at temperament more so than someone else.
Interesting.
Like someone who is conservative, well, for one, you know what party they're voting for. So they're already stuck. They're like, I'm conservative. All right. So when presented with two options, we already know which party you're voting for. Someone who is a moderate, hence, and I'm going to bring back the term swing voter, because people don't think they exist. Someone who is a swing voter is looking at temperament a lot of times. And
it's very interesting.
You know, I think that stuff matters. That stuff matters to a lot of people.
What do you think of the polling that he's like polling at 35% of Black men?
Now, the ultimate polling is when people get up and go and actually vote. All this other stuff, that's why polling is like, it's something, but it's not everything. And I have like a love-hate when it comes to polling. Some of it can indicate a trend, possibly, depending on who they're polling, how many people they're polling. I've seen stuff where they're like, yeah, definitely it's happening. And then you look and the sample is like 500 people. And it's like, you're making this large determination of 500 people, which isn't very many.
I have to tell you, when I was reporting my book, second class, and I was traveling when I was interviewing people from, you know, all walks of life, not all walks of life, working class people, but from all across the country. I didn't meet a single Black man who was planning to vote for Biden. And at the time I thought, wow, Batya, your sample is really off. Like something is wrong with the way you're going about finding these people, because this is like obviously not representative. He got 18% of Black men. Like that's not, but, now I'm looking at this polling and I'm thinking, I mean, do you know a lot of Black men who are excited to vote for Biden?
No.
Yeah, I mean, I think, but yeah.
But that, all right.
Right,
So
that doesn't mean anything. Right.
Not being excited to vote for Biden.
You think they'll stay home. You think they'll. Yeah.
That's the third option. People don't think there's a third option.
Well, but I do feel like there is like momentum. Like you're seeing like, I don't know. I feel like it's like, there has been a bit of a shift.
I'm not saying there hasn't been.
But a shift to having positive feelings about him. Are you seeing that?
A little bit, but not so much.
Not to get people off the couch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, because that's ultimately what it comes down to. They can go on. That's what.
Like, I feel like the Stormy Daniels thing.
Yeah.
Is the best one for him to be doing now, because I feel like most men are like, they're like, even if he did it, they're totally on his side, because they could picture themselves like needing to pay somebody off to keep quiet. No. That You don't feel like men,
No.
like, they're like, oh, yeah, I could see myself getting in a
But
mess like
maybe
that?
that's a certain type of guy. But if you were to ask me more than 50%, no,
Really?
no, no,
That's such a lovely, optimistic
no.
view of mankind.
Even if we narrow down to married men, no.
Really?
Yeah. Because
You don't feel there's like a lot of scoundrels out there who are like,
I'm not saying that there aren't. I'm just saying if you were to, it's just like when Trump was like, oh, that's locker room talk. That's how we all talk. It's like, that's how some guys talk.
uh-huh,
I've been around those guys.
uh-huh,
We don't all talk like
uh-huh,
that,
uh-huh.
right? I would venture to say that most guys don't talk like that. Have we? Maybe, but not. That's not like our. Like for example, that the
That's
Access Hollywood thing
Yeah.
was weird because you might do that with your friend, right? Who you're close with, but I don't think he had that kind of a relationship
with Billy Bush.
with Billy Bush to talk about him like that. For me, I would feel very weird if someone came up to me and like started talking to me like in a graphic way about
It was
women.
very graphic. Like if he had just been like, oh yeah, they let you kiss them. There was something so déclassé about the way that,
Yeah,
like, just the word he used was so like shocking to hear a person that famous. Like,
and even Billy said I was like, he just kind of like, yeah, like, he just kind of played with it, but he felt kind of weird about it too.
right.
So it's not something. Have we engaged in dirty conversation with our male friends? Sure, but that's not something you would do with a stranger.
Right, it was almost like he was performing a character.
Yeah. Like, we're guys. That's how we talk.
Yeah. Yeah, like he was trying to manifest the locker room around him by like speaking.
Imagine Trevor was like, listen, guys, I'm gonna manifest this victory.
It's really bad. Do you feel like people take themselves too seriously?
Yes.
Yeah.
So much. Especially in the online world. Every day is the last day of society. Bring the floods. Everything is over. Everything's doomed. And these people are horrible. I'm right 100% of the time. Like it's so exhausting, and I don't know how they live like that.
And they can't recognize humor in their opponents. So like I remember when I was on Bill Maher and he was reading off that quote from Jack Posobiec when he was saying, like, he was at CPAC, I guess, and he was saying, that's it, we're about to win, and then we're going to end democracy and bring on the dictatorship, which was like obviously a joke about Trump saying he's going to be a dictator on day one, which was also a joke, and like all of you see, we're right, they want a dictatorship. Like it's so wild, like that you can't recognize humor in people that you perceive to be your enemies.
Yeah. Sometimes I see people who want to be angry.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, why are you searching?
A lot of that, yeah.
And that's what like the online space is like. Everybody's just searching to be angry about something. And
because they get the like the dopamine hit from all of the likes and the retweets and the.
But this is why I go back to purpose. I think a lot of them don't have a purpose.
Yeah.
When we had that conversation years ago, it's been that long.
Is it really?
I guess so, yeah. Or at least a year. It's been at least a year. Not going to disclose everything we talked about, but like for me, that was about after having that conversation, which I really appreciate. For me, it was saying, okay, I need to figure out what my purpose is if I'm remaining in this space. And that was a big driving force for me to make sure I stay on track with what I'm trying to do. And it's not to move with the wave and move with the outrage and move with this, move with that. It's what is the point of me doing all this? Because I had a career.
Right.
Like I don't necessarily need this. I enjoy doing this, but I also feel like there's a need to serve people in a particular way and represent not just myself, but a lot of regular, sensible people
Yeah.
who don't like this stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
And so that's, I do see myself as that in a bit.
So how would you define your purpose?
My purpose has been to serve, to serve. All my jobs have been customer service related. The things that I've always enjoyed was helping people. And
So
I don't think that our media environment is serving the public. I don't think it's helping the public. And what I mean by that is regular people aren't being represented. So what's great about like what you've been doing in your book, you're at least the people that you've talked to, you're giving them a voice. You're at least asking them, hey, how do you feel? And you're not doing what the rest of the media does in 2016, where they're just going around asking, why do you support Trump? And they're like, that's not really why they support Trump.
right.
It was like, then why'd you ask these people? You know,
it was literally like they'd be like, why are you voting for Trump? And they'd be like, I'm voting for Trump because I'm worried that immigration is driving down my wages. And then the camera would turn back to the camera and be like, you see, they're voting for Trump because they are racist, right? Like they would literally, it was like they would translate an economic concern into a
Right.
racial.
Right.
It was
Middle
awful.
class speak.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm a
Totally.
middle class interpreter.
As you can hear for
Yes.
yourself, look, he said it's because he hates the blacks. Didn't you hear him say that? I heard him say that.
What was that? No more brown people in
Right,
America?
right,
Oh, okay.
exactly.
Very interesting. And so I guess for me, yeah, some of it, what I'm doing is it's about me expressing myself, but I'm saying the thing that many of people want to hear. Like I'm
Right,
you know,
right.
many of
But it's so much beyond that, Adam, because you give confidence to people like me to report what we're seeing.
Yeah.
Because there's so much energy directed at us, calling us racist and bigots for saying like what is obviously true about most people of color in America, you know? But you give confidence to everybody else by simply like saying like, trust your own eyes, trust what you're seeing. Like it has such a trickle down effect on people being able to speak the truth.
Yeah. And the other thing, and I've had people say this to me and I appreciate, is they tell me like how not everyone's on Twitter, but like people who are on Twitter, they've messaged me and said, you know what? I want to be more like you on Twitter. And that's because I stay away from the noise.
And you're funny. You make jokes.
Because I don't take myself too seriously.
But your jokes are good.
Yes. But like I think the noise aspect, I think is a really, really big thing. It's like, why are you guys going on and on about this? They're going on about a freaking calendar. Like, imagine if they had that much energy to something that was useful. And so I find that the more I'm busy serving, the less I'm on there, the less I'm involved in any of that stuff, because I'm staying towards the purpose. The purpose is to not just create content, but to serve the public in a meaningful and healthy way. Like the purpose of me even doing this is to encourage good faith dialogue. I'm not just trying to talk to people on the right and every conservative influencer and stuff like that. I talk to regular people. I talk to Democrats. Like some of the people I don't even know their political affiliation. I don't care. I just think they're interesting and nice people. And there are people I've talked to, a couple of people I've talked to on the right where I disagree with them often, but I wanted to talk to them because I think they're interesting. So I think we need to encourage dialogue and find the commonality aspect. And like I was telling Jay Bhattacharya, any system that is created to divide people is inherently a bad system. And you know, we were talking at the time in the context of slavery, but politics, which one are you, Democrat or Republican? It's literally a divide between the two. And what I'm trying to say is you can have the party that you support, just like I have my baseball team or basketball team or soccer team that I support. That's fine. But it doesn't mean that the other team is inherently horrible, right? You can respect the players on the other team too and recognize talent. Like there's a humanity aspect that you don't have to lose because you selected a team. And I think, especially like in the online space, there's that humanity aspect that's leaving. And they go outside and they think that they look at one thing, they must be a Democrat. They're just, it's like, man, the online space is probably the most poisonous space if you do not recognize what they're trying to do. So if you don't recognize that you're being propagandized, so you have to take everything with a grain of salt, then you're going to be propagandized.
Yeah.
And if you think that only CNN propagandizes you, then you're a fool, because everybody is. That's the game. So you have to decide, is 80% of this correct? 20% of it lean? Like, you have to figure that out. But, I'm mostly like in the right-leaning space, and I'm like, you guys don't see it because you've never been on the left looking at the right. And, I was on the left, and I see all this stuff a lot differently than they do if they've been, conservative Republican their entire life. But you guys are being propagandized too, and I think that there's a unifying factor for all of us to help each other out, to find some sort of cohesion, because there are many ways that we have cohesion. Like, you don't shop at stores that only vote one particular way. You don't say, well, the grocer or the cashier is a Republican, so I'm not gonna, like, that'd be ridiculous. So why do we pretend like we can't get along with people who vote in a different way? And the one last thing I'll say is, like, the humanity part. One of the things that sickened me, that continues to sicken me, is when people who are on the right see someone in New York City, for example, get attacked, the crazy homeless people, and they say they voted for it. It's a even if it's true, it does not mean that you deserve to be attacked. No one goes to the polls and says, well, I hope this leads to me being attacked on the streets. No one does that. And you assume that they voted in the first place. You're assuming all types of stuff about this person. Either someone getting attacked unprovoked is bad, or it's not. So if being attacked unprovoked by some crazy guy on the street is bad, it doesn't matter who they voted for, right? They're a human being. So they were being violated, and you should be upset no matter who they voted for. And I that's one thing that's like really bothered me recently, like this dialogue, women getting beat up. They're like, where was it? Los Angeles? You voted for it. Where was it? New York? You voted for it. Like, the fuck does that mean? It's gross. Absolutely gross. That's my diatribe.
No, it's a good one. A good one to start winding things down.
Yeah.
I really like the way you put it, Service, because you are such a shining example to so many. So thank you for that.
As are you.
Having me on your show. It's really, really nice.
Thank you. And I do ask the final question. Are you optimistic about the future?
Very.
Well, there you go. Do you want to elaborate?
Gosh, what's there to be pessimistic about? I just feel like we can turn this ship around.
Yeah.
I think we will.
I think so too. I think when there are always going to be problems, right? We're never going to be absent of problems. Humans are flawed. We're broken. And so our problems are just going to look different. Right now, they're mutilating kids, and then maybe they'll stop, and then it'll be something else in the future. Just like 100 years ago, they were giving lobotomies, and they stopped. So it'll always be something. But at the end, I say this as someone who believes in God. At the end, good will prevail. That's my belief, and that's what keeps me going. So I don't know any other way to live other than optimistically.
Really beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. But thank you for coming to my house.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you for patronizing my dog.
She patronized me.
Yeah, there she goes. There she goes. Ma'am. Come here, come here. Say goodbye. Say goodbye to the audience. There we go. But thank you so much for coming over. I appreciate it. And obviously, we'll keep in touch.